Good evening. On behalf of the York County Bar Association, I am pleased to welcome you to the 2021 Judicial Candidates Forum for the Court of Common Pleas for York County. Tonight, we are partnering with CBS 21, York College Center for Community Engagement, and the York Daily Record, York Sunday. My name is Chris Farrell, and I'm the current president of the York County Bar Association. COVID-19 has disrupted just about every significant matter in the country. The York County legal community is no different and not immune to these issues. So tonight, we're gathered here in the York County Judicial Center. We are socially distanced, we are in compliance with all CDC guidelines, and we are certainly missing our traditional in-person audience for these particular forums. We would like to very much thank White Rose Community Television, and specifically Cliff Kearns, who is here individually working the technology for us. Because of them, we're able to get this information out to as many York County voters as possible. We would also like to thank, on behalf of our bar, our President Judge, Maria Musty Cook, and also members of our court administration, Paul Kraus and Kyle Benzer. They've made this place available, and we believe it is very much appropriate for the subject matter that will be discussed tonight. I would also be remiss if I did not personally thank all of the individuals that put this matter together tonight. This has been a labor-intensive process. Even in regular times, these matters are difficult to pull together. In COVID times, it's exceptionally difficult. I would like to thank our CEO, Victoria Connor, who has really been the glue pulling all parts and all pieces of this puzzle in place to make this happen tonight. We've had a wonderful committee with the Bar Association and also lawyers and non-lawyers. Our committee members include the Honorable Stephen P. Linepaugh, retired judge, the Honorable John Euler, retired judge, Dominic Delacarpini and Vinnie Canizzaro from York College, Brian Strong, Ann Zerby, and also we've had assistance today as our timekeepers, Attorney Anne-Marie McElwee and her paralegal, Tina Mobley. Tonight, we are very happy to have a distinguished group of panelists who are going to assist us with respect to questioning our candidates. We have Scott Fisher, the editorial page editor and community engagement editor with the York Daily Record and York Sunday News. We have Mike Gorsinger from CBS 21, and we also have Deanna Wright, who is the director of community conversations at the York College Center for Community Engagement, the Arthur J. Gladfelder Institute of Public Policy. Finally, I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight's event, Dr. Terry Madonna, who will come up shortly and give us the rules for the event tonight and keep us all on track. In 2020, Dr. Madonna became a senior fellow in residence for political affairs at Millersville University. Prior to this, at Franklin and Marshall College, he was the director of the Center of Politics and Public Affairs, the professor of public affairs, and the director of the Franklin and Marshall College Poll. For more than 30 years, Dr. Madonna has taught and written about his two academic specialties, the American presidency and the American political parties and their political behavior. As a pollster in recent years, he has written extensively about voters and voting behavior. He holds a PhD in political history from the University of Delaware, and he has received awards too numerous to list tonight. He is a regular analyst for WGAL and appears throughout the country on matters involving American history, American government, and American politics. And for anyone who lives in central Pennsylvania during the last election cycle, if you're not familiar with Dr. Madonna, my belief is that you are living under a rock somewhere. Dr. Madonna has moderated gubernatorial, congressional, state, legislative, and school board forums. We are truly honored to have him here tonight. Dr. Madonna, welcome. Good luck, guys.
Well, it's certainly my, I'll wait till I get to the microphone. It's certainly my pleasure to be here. And the essential element, I think, is fairness as we go through this, this panel. And my job right now is to lay out the ground rules. First of all the questions that will be asked were prepared by the committee that Chris referred to in order to ensure appropriateness of the questions, the tone of the questions, and the respect and role, responsibility, if you will, of the judiciary. There are 14 questions that will be asked, and they address knowledge, character, and effectiveness. Questions will not be accepted from the chat due to the nature of the program, and I'll be asking some additional questions. So you will notice the seating order. The seating order was determined by lot, and so the panelists as well as the candidates fall into that category. Each candidate will be invited to answer the same opening question that I answer and that I ask, and they're limited to 1 minute. And then we'll rotate the order in responding so that each candidate will also have an opportunity to go first. Each candidate will be allowed 1.5 minutes to answer the question. And I want to point out that, again, that if you go over the minute or so, minute and a half, that's fine. Finish your sentence. Don't go on for 30 seconds, but 5 or 10 seconds will certainly be adequate. And then there'll be a 30-second response, if you will. You know, if you want to respond to something that one of the other candidates said, and the candidate, you get 30 seconds for a rebuttal, and each candidate will be invited to answer the same closing question by me, the moderator, and you get 1.5 minutes. YCBA President Farrell will wrap up the session and remind folks, I think we have an election on May 18th, which I think everybody in this room knows, and hopefully many folks in our audience will know. So as we say, I get to ask the first question, and we're going to go in order: C1, C2, C3, panelist 1, panelist 2, panelist 3. So I'm going to ask the first question. We'll start with candidate 1, and we'll go through the list. So as we start this out, the first question is simply, why do you want the job? Suzanne Smith, why do you want to be a judge?
Are you asking me to do the 29-7 or?
Oh, I forgot. Already I forgot. They have to introduce themselves. How could I forget this? By something known as elevator speeches. The specifications: no more than 27 words can be delivered in 9 seconds and make 3 points. I never heard of this, by the way. So this is going to be a very interesting way. Suzanne, do the elevator speech.
The only candidate experienced in criminal, family, and civil law. I'm fair, impartial, and even-tempered. Community service includes school board, expungement, and other free legal clinics.
I'm Joe Gothie. I'm a lifelong conservative Republican. I've worked on thousands of criminal court cases in York. I'm endorsed by the York County and York City Fraternal Order of Police.
I'm Steve Stambaugh. I'm a native Yorker and lifelong conservative Republican. My 34 years of civil court experience make me the only candidate capable of filling the civil court vacancy.
All right, I presume the elevator speech introductions work. All right, Suzanne, I'm going to go back to you. And this is, I think, an important question that, gets asked a lot, but in some cases it doesn't get asked of candidates, and I think it's an important question. Why do you want to be a judge?
I think a judge is someone who will come to the bench with experience and knowledge, and I believe my background will provide the experience, knowledge, and temperament appropriate for being a judge. I believe as a lawyer, we are to give back to the community. I have shown that I have done that, and I think that the ultimate way to give back to the community as a lawyer is to become a judge. I believe my background, I believe all the candidates up here are good lawyers, but I believe that being a good lawyer does not necessarily make a good judge. I believe that of the three of us, I am the candidate who will make the best judge. I can hit the ground running. I have the experience in the various areas of the law, and I believe I have shown that I have the proper temperament. Thank you.
Well, I want to clarify one point, which is we're going to be electing 2 judges this year, and it's not either or. You get to pick as a voter 2 candidates that are appearing here tonight. And my reasons for running for judge are that I believe that we need to have a court system that functions as an independent branch of government that's co-equal with our other two branches of government, the executive and the legislative. I believe we have a specific role to serve in terms of mediating and adjudicating disputes of all kinds. I think that needs to be done with the utmost integrity and care and respect for the people that come into the court system, whether they come in voluntarily, maybe to do an adoption, or whether they're hailed into court unwillingly in criminal court, or even potentially as victims in cases. They all need to be treated with respect and dignity. And I've practiced through the 24 years that I've been an attorney in many jurisdictions, largely in York County over the last 18 to 20 years. But I've seen a lot of judges, good and bad, and I have some ideas about what we can do to reform our processes here, make our court system function more humanely, efficiently, and less expensively for the people that get drawn into the court system. And I think that I can really make a difference in that way that would be impossible to make as an attorney.
So after a 34-year career that literally spanned many states in this country, I believe the highest honor that an attorney can achieve is serving his or her community on and from the bench. In terms of civil court experience, I do some criminal law, certainly not as much as either Suzanne or Joe. But in terms of civil court experience, it's unparalleled. I know not only all the lawyers, but the claims adjusters know the law inside and out. And I think that brings a unique set of skills to the courtroom to help move those cases, not only through a litigation format, but through a resolution format, especially since most cases are resolved short of a jury trial.
Okay. All right, what we're going to do, as I indicated before, is the panelists will ask a question. We'll do it in order, 1, 2, 3, so that, you know, we're starting with a different candidate for each of the questions. This one will be panelist number 1, who will ask question number 2. Go ahead, Deanna.
What are the most important factors a voter should consider when deciding which judicial candidate to vote for?
Okay, go ahead.
So I think the voters should look at the individual's experience. What are they bringing to the bench? In this particular situation, we don't know what vacancy we'll be filling. We don't know if it'll be in family law, criminal law, civil law. So you want a lawyer who's going to be able to step into any of those roles and hit the ground running. You also want to look at what the judge has done. Where have they been active in the community? Have they been serving the community? And what about their temperament? Do they have the appropriate temperament? When you step onto that bench and you put your robe on, that's not going to make things better or worse. It is what it is. So those voting should consider all of those factors. You're looking for a nonpartisan, impartial person to take the bench and to listen to the litigants, whatever litigants they may be, whatever court you're in, and you want to make sure that that individual can be fair and impartial and make decisions based on what's happening in the courtroom.
Ready in order.
Sure. I think the first and most important characteristic that we should expect from judges is a deep sense of humility. Each of us is an experienced attorney. We've done many different things, but none of us has ever been a judge before. Some of us have served in judicial-like roles, such as serving on a panel of arbitrators in civil cases, which I've done many times. Mr. Stambaugh, I believe, has as well. I'm not sure about Ms. Smith. But I've spoken to some of our judges who've retired, some of our judges who are certainly elders to me, and I wanted to know what I would be getting into. And they said, look, you're going to take 2 years to get good at the job. And it is correct that we are at the mercy of a very strong-willed group of individuals that all have seniority over us, and we will do whatever we're told when we're put on the court. I think my highest and best use would be in adult criminal court, where my practice experience is, but I've had a significant amount of civil experience as well. I think a well-rounded candidate would be a good candidate, one with a deep sense of humility and one with a proven record of somebody who solves problems and has been a reformer in multiple contexts. And I've been able to do that in group contexts on school board and also in individual situations and projects that I've worked on, such as the law library here in York County.
Okay, next.
Unquestionably experience, unquestionably temperament, and unquestionably impartiality are all important considerations. Been doing this for 34 years. There really isn't a whole lot that I haven't seen or handled. I think it's also important that you have a judge that knows how to run a business and the difficulties that our business community faces, not only just trying to run a business, but also trying to run a business in the world of COVID. Ultimately, though, I think York County wants a judge that has shared or similar values to the community that we as judges are going to serve. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Scott, what is the most pressing need in the York County court system, and what can be done to meet that need?
Go ahead.
The court system is like an iceberg, Mr. Fisher. I only see a certain part of it. And whenever I, in my last answer, referenced that you need to come into the job with a sense of humility, I'm going to need, quite honestly, time to observe a large part of the iceberg, be part of judicial conferences, and see and hear from my colleagues, if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, to know where the real true issues are. Otherwise, I have a very limited scope of what is going on in the courthouse other than what I know about personally, professionally. I think there's no business in the world that would hire somebody off the street into essentially an executive or administrative role and have them come in and tell everybody else how to do things. There have been a lot of people working inside the business, or in this case, the courthouse, that have a lot more experience and depth of knowledge. My personal observations and experiences suggest to me that my most important task will be to be respectful to the litigants when they come in, to all parties that come in, to start court on time, to be prompt. One of my favorite judges in that respect is Judge Ness, who uniformly starts court on time or even early. So sometimes if you have your paperwork organized, you can get into his court even a little bit ahead and get in and out very quickly. And I find that very refreshing. It's not always the case. In addition, I think temperament is a huge issue, and it's a concern that I've had over the years. And I believe that we have some very good judges in that respect. Judge Kraft is excellent, and she's unflappable. And I would certainly want to model my behavior after that, because I think it brings a calm to a courtroom where there's a situation frequently can be contentious, and that steady hand on the tiller is important.
Okay, go ahead.
So the question is, what does the court need? I would not, deign to know exactly what the court's needs are, but as an observer who appears before the court on a regular basis, I can tell you the court needs skilled, effective judges, period. This court bears an incredible caseload, and it seems like we're constantly down judges. And so we need skilled, effective judges to handle the docket. Even when we fill these two positions, Judge Bortner's position is vacant. So we are constantly down judges, and so we need good judges. Thank you.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Suzanne.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think the question was the pressing need for the York County courts. Based on my diverse experience, I think the pressing need right now is addressing mental health issues and addiction issues, and I think those two go somewhat hand in hand. I think that and I don't think we're unique. I think the county and across the state and in other states, mental health is an issue that is being attempted to being addressed. I know we struggle with getting evaluations done timely. We have people sometimes lingering in jail waiting for those things to happen. And so I think with and Judge Strabilcock is bringing in the CARD program, Community Action for Recovery and Diversion, and that program specifically is to address addiction and mental health. And the mental health issue goes across all the courts. We're seeing it impact people, litigants in family law, in criminal law, in civil law. It impacts everybody, and it impacts this community. The last thing we want are mental health people sitting in jail waiting for treatment. We need more of it, and we need more finances to accommodate the mental health issues, and we need a community that's capable of basically assisting and being proactive in that.
Okay, go ahead.
Please talk about your understanding of the challenges ex-offenders have in reentering society. What changes would you see as possible within the parameters of the position of judge?
Re-entering offenders, I can't imagine coming out of jail after serving 5 or 10 or 15 years and being able to transition effectively into society. Honestly don't know a whole lot about what a judge is going to be able to do with that. That's going to be a social program that is going to need to be developed. I mean, a judge can order, you can order all sorts of things and have defendants do all sorts of things either prior to or after incarceration, but at the end of the day, they either want to change their life around or they don't. Treatment court programs are very effective in helping people along in that process because you're shepherding them constantly. But, you could have accountability, you could have people coming into court, but at the end of the day, this bench is grossly understaffed. And I don't know how long, where these hours are going to come from for all these judges to layer this stuff on. I think probation can help with that. Community service programs can help with that. But I don't know that there's a whole lot a judge is going to be able to do about that.
Okay. Ready? Go ahead, Deanna. Back to number 1.
So the challenging facing ex-offenders are huge. When you leave prison, you're coming out with a record. And so we have programs here in York. We have the Reentry program, which I know the DAs are actively involved in. We have something called the program. And these programs actually assist the offenders in finding housing and finding employment and finding treatment and maintaining treatment and having access to the medication that they may need. So as far as what a judge can do, we need to be aware of those things. And we need to basically know what resources are available or tax probation or state parole to know what resources are available. Partnerships in this community with the court system are what's going to save this community. We need everyone involved in helping ex-offenders find housing. They will not be able to be productive members of the society if they can't have somewhere to live, if they can't get treatment, if they can't get their medication. Transportation becomes an issue when a lot of convictions might lead to license suspension. And they might need to have certain things installed in their vehicles, and so those all cost money. And as a judge, we need to be aware of what the consequences of our actions are going to be and make sure that we have probation aware of this as well, and that the community is aware, and that we're partnering with those people.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Go ahead.
I think we have to be creative and flexible problem solvers. One of our best judges, and the man I clerked for when I first came to York County was Judge Kennedy. He saw an intractable problem and solved it through the use of technology, basically ankle monitors to try to limit alcohol use while people were on bail. Release from incarceration and sort of reintroduction into society in a manner that will provide a foundation for success is likewise one of those issues that seems to be very intractable. We have an instinct and an urge on one hand to sanction people for wrongdoing, and then on the other hand, we need to also make sure that when they do get out, because 90% of everybody that goes to jail is going to be released someday when they serve their sentence. We need to make sure when they get out that they have something there for them so that they are able to achieve success. Otherwise, it's going to be catch and release, which is expensive. It has an enormous human toll, and it's a tragic waste of resources. Every life that is wasted, or any person they harm because they don't succeed, whether they would steal from them or commit some additional crime, is a failure that we may, in some shape, be accountable for. I think we need to give them access to housing. I think the community programs that Suzanne is talking about with partnerships with existing institutions are important because we need to piggyback on what we already have rather than trying to build in our own smokestack, in our own isolated area, an entirely new system that may already exist.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you think the court system is working, or do you believe the civil or criminal justice system is breaking down? If the latter, what can be done to affect change?
Go ahead, back to you.
So I think Attorney Gothie mentioned earlier, and maybe Attorney Stambaugh, about the volume. In that regard, I think that the system is being a little overwhelmed. I think the big area that it's being overwhelmed in is in family law, where we're seeing a number of pro se litigants. I know that York County does have the Self-Help Center, and that is helping the system. Obviously, during COVID times, the system we were functioning. We weren't functioning well, but we were functioning, which was better than some other counties. We certainly took advantage of our technology, and we have been continuing to move forward. So I think in answer to the question, the system is working, but the system can always be improved, and the system has to adapt to the changing times. The self-represented individuals, we adapted to COVID. I think that we learned that technology can be our friend, as much as we all hate multiple Zoom meetings and hearings, but for those, we wouldn't be functioning at all. So I do believe the system can always be improved, but I think we are working.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a difficult year to ask that question because what we're experiencing is not normal. This is not a good baseline indicator of where this system should be on a normal basis. Unprecedented is the overused word of the last 12 to 14 months at this point, but it is just so apt under these circumstances. We are going to have an enormous backlog that we've been trying to work through and continue to work through with the new things that are now coming in with businesses reopening and activity returning to normal. So we're going to see an increased caseload in criminal court, certainly. Family law, I think, spiked last year anyway. But we need to work through what we got stuck on with COVID, and everyone really did what they could. They made tremendous accommodations to try to make these cases move. But we also, as Mr. Stambaugh mentioned earlier, we are constantly going to be down a judge in York County due to the irregularity of retirements, the generally senior age of this cohort. I'm the youngest person here at 48. We've got a population of judges that's basically 45 to 70 plus. There's always going to be someone that we're going to lose. So we're always going to be fighting the fire with too few people.
Right.
So I think one thing that we might do is ask for some legislative relief to get an extra body with the recognition that when you get to a certain size of the bench, that you just do not always have a full complement. And that puts everybody under additional stress. It burns out judges and creates problems for people that appear in front of them. In terms of working through our caseloads, I think we just need to have people that are willing to put their nose to the grindstone and push. One of my favorite examples, well, I'll give it another time, I'm over limit, so.
Okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
All right. I think we have an excellent bench. I think they do an amazing job. I'm not a fan of Zoom hearings. I'd rather appear in person. I'm less concerned about moving cases. I think criminal court, you have a right to a speedy trial as a defendant. In family law court and civil court, and I can't really speak to family law court because I don't do family law cases, all right? But in civil court, I'm vastly more concerned about getting to the right result as opposed to a quick result. The drafters of the federal and state constitutions put a time constraint in criminal cases, speedy trial. They did not do that in civil cases. The constraint was that it be a fair trial. And so, yeah, our bench is doing amazingly well. They just need help. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have a question. What we've been dealing with here are questions that deal with knowledge, the knowledge that you all have. And I have a question pertaining to that. Discuss your goals in cases involving juveniles and what could be done to best assure positive direction for youth in the judicial system?
Well, I served on the Central York School Board, and one of the things that I had to do as a member of that is to deal with student adjudications. And it was one of the most difficult things that I had to do because you would have some very difficult situations. Kids would get in trouble for all kinds of things, from really bad to things that you figure you can fix.
Right.
And there was always a host of root causes that were on display in full flower, right? Disrupted homes, substance abuse, physical abuse, neglect, all of those things. Juvenile justice is very different from adult justice in that we're concerned strongly with rehabilitation of the youth. And I think that we need to make sure that whenever a minor comes in, first of all, we have to ensure the safety of the community. If this person truly is violent, we need to separate them from society, and we have to deal with it. I believe, and in my experience with juvenile cases, for the most part, they do not fall into that category, and they're people that need supports. They may need mental health treatment. They may need counseling to deal with childhood trauma. We can save kids. It's a lot harder to save somebody that's 50 and that's a 3-time loser. And I think we need to put the resources where we can help the kids out. One of the things we asked about, what can we do to help people with reentry? Well, make sure they don't have to ever reenter by trying to help fix them when they're young to make sure they don't come back into court.
Right.
So again, this is really a larger societal problem, and a lot of these children, so some of these children are just, they have unfortunate brushes with the law because we're a lot more dense population, and things that perhaps some of us did as children wouldn't result in a law enforcement encounter, and nowadays those same activities do. But at the same time, we have a lot of social, frankly, decay, and a lot of just broken up family units. And if there isn't a firm rudder at home, then of course you're going to have errant ships. So, it's again striking that balance, which is probably the most difficult thing that any judge is going to do, because every judge, I think, ultimately wants to do what's right in his or her heart. And it's hard to know. You just got to try and find the spot between trying to save this youngster and then starting to teach him about ramifications for repetitive bad decisions, and striking that balance. I mean, you hear these, stories. I watch the 700 Club and support this, Christian Broadcasting Network, and you get these repeat offenders that come before judges, and the judge gives them a break, and it turns their life around. So even the repeat offender can still be saved, and you got to find that balance. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I would reiterate what Attorney Gothie said regarding being on school board and seeing a number of things from that position, and seeing what is going on in the schools. A number of schools have brought in social workers because there are so many things to deal with that children are dealing with and students are dealing with that, years ago probably wasn't as pertinent. As far as dealing with that as a judge, again, our partnerships with our schools are going to assist us moving forward. We know that right now truancy is a big issue, and truancy is an indicator of a likelihood that the child could end up in the delinquent system. So if we do early intervention, if we're addressing the truancy early on, if we're finding out why they're truant, sometimes it's something simple, that maybe the child is homeless or living in a car, and there's something the school can do, there's something that the truancy court can do. So there are options available. I think both Attorney Stambaugh and Attorney Gothie mentioned, obviously, if we're talking about a violent offense, we need to address that, and we also need to remember to keep the community safe. As a juvenile judge, you need to be familiar with the programs that are available and make sure that you're picking the right program. Again, juveniles are coming into the arena differently. Their brains aren't fully developed, and so we need to keep that in mind as we move forward in dealing with them. If we satchel them with a conviction, a felony and a misdemeanor, that's going to impact them going forward as well. So again, trying to intervene early will keep the juvenile hopefully from entering the system.
Might I follow up on that just briefly?
Sure.
One of the things that I got a report on as a school board member in Central York was the number of children who were homeless, that were living in motels. And I have come from a background where that was not even a possible thing to contemplate because my family was resourced and we were comfortable. And it really made me think and assess the needs of people at the very margins of society. And it was a really important experience for me personally. And I think the idea that there are students attending our schools in York County who are homeless is something that everybody in this community needs to know, care about, and help to fix.
Okay. What are the causes of the high rate of minority incarceration?
I think the primary issue is broken homes. I think another issue is concentrated urban poverty. A lot of the issues that are frequently spoken of, there's very much a York City, York County mentality. And a lot of times people in York County will look at York City and say, you know, you're the problem child of the county. I see those same problems in dense areas of poverty outside within the county, in manufactured housing communities that are poorly run, for instance. You'll see the same kind of ills that occur in basically economically obsolete housing in York City. But ultimately, I think the fundamental thing that can make a difference in whether somebody makes it or not, you look at all the statistics, a home without two parents makes a titanic difference in outcomes. It doesn't mean that each person's destiny is controlled by that. If you come from a single parent family, it doesn't mean you are personally destined to have all these, suffer from higher crime rate or addiction or things of that nature. But in the aggregate, it is absolutely true, as identified by Senator Moynihan, a Democrat in the 70s from New York. And he did a very thoughtful analysis of essentially the dissolution of the American family. And he said it was going to come home to roost in white America, as well as in, as it was already being manifested at that time in communities of color. And I think that it absolutely has. It affects everybody.
Yeah, the other question that I have, and then we'll turn back to the panelists, do you believe the composition of juries in York County adequately and fairly reflects society at large? Why or why not?
To me?
We'll move on to the next
Sure.
question. Yeah.
Was anybody else getting that question that I just had?
Yeah, I was going to ask about
Yeah.
that.
Oh, go ahead. You want to answer that question too?
I wasn't sure if they were individually directed or if we were just moving around.
No, we're moving around.
All right.
Oh, we're
great.
moving around. Okay, I didn't know the change either. All right. I'm sorry. Jury,
That's all right.
do juries adequately represent the community? I think so, by and large.
That's it?
Yeah, I mean, the last jury trial, I thought there was more than sufficient people in the pool. I would have preferred to have had, some more people that I wanted and not have some of the people I wanted stricken, but, that's just how that
All right,
goes. But,
okay,
I thought
that's
it was
fine.
a
You're
fair
giving the answers, that's
representation of
fine.
the community. Yeah.
You want to try it?
So when I have done jury trials in the past, if I have a client who is not white, I will say that when they see their jury panel, the jury panel is normally almost all white. However, I guess jury panels are made up of various things: driver's license records, voter registration, various things that everyone can be part of. So when I have done some research and looked at population and tried to see, are we seeing minority representation in the panel? Is it appropriate or is it not? In the past couple of years, I have seen it improve. Again, we have to look at the population in York County. However, it is something that should be looked at a little bit, and when you have a client who is not white and the entire panel is white. So I don't know. It might reflect York County adequately, but it doesn't necessarily reflect for that individual a jury of their peers.
Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go, this covers the questions dealing with knowledge, and we're now going to go to the questions dealing with character. And to keep on the same order so that we have panelist 2 and candidate 2, we'll turn it here and you can ask the question, Joe.
What are your views on whether the court deals effectively with racial and gender bias?
Well, I think people need to be aware of the issues, first of all. If they are not thinking about them, I think there is a much larger possibility that they would do something that would be inappropriate or that would be insensitive. And I've represented many clients from many Hispanic clients, many black clients, many clients from various countries overseas. And I always try to be sensitive to them, but I know I'm not perfect. I grew up at the end of a 2-mile dirt road in Appalachia. I mean, I grew up in a county that was roughly probably 98% white. And I was not experienced when I came out of that area, went to college, and it was a wake-up call for me. And there were many gracious people who tolerated missteps that I made and helped me along the way. And had that not happened, I don't think that my progress in understanding their culture and understanding them would have been what it is to this day. So the court, I think, needs to have sort of that self-awareness and that self-analysis, and so that make sure that people do kind of go through that process. The world appears different to different people based on where you've come from and what you've done and what you've personally experienced. There's no doubt about that. And I think we all need to make sure that everyone that comes in, regardless of their background or their heritage, feels as though they are heard fairly and treated fairly.
Okay, thank you. Next, go ahead.
So we're back to the rotation.
Yeah, we're back to the rotation.
I honestly think York County, the bench does an amazing job of treating people fairly. I can tell you in civil court, I really don't see the opportunity for any kind of bias. I've represented minorities, obviously, and have never had a problem with that. My experience with the jury panels I've had in York County, the last one I had was like 2 years ago, and there were a number of, I think, ladies of color, and I mean not one or two, but I think there were 4, maybe 5 on the final panel. So I'm just not seeing that. In terms of the cases in criminal court, my clients that are minorities, I thought they were treated fairly by not only law enforcement, but the district attorney's office, and ultimately by the members of the bench. So, I mean, I know we're getting bombarded by all this stuff on a national level, but I'm just not really seeing that here locally,
Go ahead.
in my personal practice.
Thank you.
I think the thing is we need to be on the watch for racial and gender bias, and we need to be educated. There are CLE requirements for lawyers and judges, and I believe these areas are targeted, and I think it's important to be aware. I think Attorney Gothie mentioned, being culturally aware and listening and accepting differences, and again, being educated. I think most people do not intend to be racially biased or gender biased. I think that sometimes it's just a lack of knowledge or a lack of understanding, and education will clearly help in that regard.
Okay, go ahead.
What qualities have you seen in a judge that you would like to emulate? And on the flip side, what qualities have you seen in a judge that you would not like to emulate?
Go ahead, Steve.
Is it me?
Yeah.
First of all, temperance. It's easy when you've been up there. It's like a MASH unit, and you're really just trying to keep up with the docket. And it's easy, I think, to get a little overwhelmed and perhaps frustrated by that. So just understand. I was talking to a lawyer today, and they said, please, if you're lucky enough to get elected, don't forget what it's like to be on the other side, to be out here in the real world practicing. So I think that's the first thing, understanding and patience. Secondly, knowledge of the matter, the area of the law in question. In terms of what I don't want to do is I just don't want to be the angry judge. If I'm an angry judge, then that's when it's time to retire. Because I'm really not helping, ultimately, the attorneys or the parties that they represent. So, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Qualities of judges that I would emulate. I was a clerk for Judge Euler, and I've appeared in front of numerous judges. I like judges that are listening to the litigants. that are respectful to the litigants. It's not easy to be sitting up there, and I'm not in any regard trying to say that is easy to do. Being respectful and listening to people is a skill. Being approachable, allowing litigants their time. I think some of us forget that when we walk into a courtroom, we're very familiar with the people, with the parties, and we understand what we're doing. Most people come in one or two times, and they're overwhelmed. And so they don't always dress properly. They don't always address the court properly. And I think that it's important for the legal system to remember that not everyone is familiar with how it works. Obviously, as an attorney, we try to remind our clients to dress properly and to speak properly and to address the judge properly and to sit up. But again, those are things that the judge needs to remember and to understand. So I think the qualities of the judges that I've liked are those that listen and are respectful. It's understood that if you become a judge, I think you're knowledgeable, you're fair and impartial. So I kind of assume that, and I'm looking for beyond. Another quality that I liked of a number of the judges in the past is they would note if they saw someone they knew in the courtroom and make sure that that party wasn't involved. And again, to address the potential of an appearance of impropriety.
Mm-hmm. Joe, go ahead.
Don't make drama. Keep your nose clean, stay out of trouble. Be kind to people, patient but firm. An example I was going to give earlier, Judge Livingood in Bedford County. He's younger than I am. He's running for retention this year. They have two public defenders out there. One of them quit unexpectedly. And normally what they would do, one public defender would do a case, the other one would meet with the client, they'd switch back and forth. And they'd get their work done by 5 o'clock and manage the caseload. They only had one person to do it. And everybody in the courtroom stayed till 10 o'clock, got all their work done, and nobody got cross, nobody raised a voice, nobody complained, or they didn't kick the cases down the road. It was one of the most outstanding, amazing things I'd ever heard. I couldn't imagine it actually happening here in York County. And I think that just flexibility, patience, and an even temper, I think, are really the key things. That's what I hope to bring, and that's what I would like to emulate.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're back to panelist one. We're recycling these through, so we have a question for Suzanne Smith. Go ahead, dear.
How would you enforce a law that you do not agree with on personal, moral, or religious grounds?
So as a judge, we're committed to following the law and interpreting the law. Our personal opinion, whether it's based on religion or something else, has no bearing and should not impact our decisions as we make them. I think that as I've been on the campaign trail, I have been asked questions regarding my position in certain areas of the law. And I think it's important that if there's a potential that these types of cases can come before us, we shouldn't be putting out our personal opinion and it shouldn't be known. We want to make decisions based on the law, based on the facts in front of us, based on what is being presented to us. And our own beliefs should have no bearing on those things.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm asking for this job. I'm doing a lot of work to go and do it. So I have to live with the consequences. I have always been fairly engaged in partisan matters here in York County. That's not a secret. I'm going to have to leave that chapter of my life behind, close the book, and put it on the shelf. That's just part of life. As Ms. Smith suggested, there are things that I may not agree with. We all are very opinionated people with a diverse set of beliefs and values. I don't leave my values behind necessarily, but your duty, your oath, is to follow the law, not to make it up, not to do things that you think are important. It may be distasteful, it may be unpleasant, it may be difficult. I don't think any judge has ever enjoyed sentencing somebody to death. But you have to do the job that you are mandated to do. And it is not up to you to decide what the law should be or which ones you're going to follow. That is abhorrent and should never occur.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, that was probably the most packed question I've heard so far this evening because it encompasses civil, criminal, juvenile, family, I mean, constitutional, right? And so to give a boilerplate answer to such a sweeping question is very difficult. But I will tell you this. Here's the law. And here's the law. And here's the facts of the case, right? And so we asked questions about racial justice. We asked questions about juveniles. We asked all sorts of questions earlier, right? And ultimately, you take the law, which is this thing right here, but then you've got the facts of the case that's before you, right? And you have to, you know what I told you before is I really care about getting to a just result, a just result. Not a quick result necessarily, a just result. And so the last thing I want is somebody who's innocent going to jail. The last thing I want is some child that, the law says, lock them up forever. And all of a sudden, that doesn't make any sense. So you take the facts and you look at those facts very carefully. When I was in law school at the University of Miami, one of my professors my first year, Erwin Stotsky, taught us we had to read a lot of cases by a judge named Benjamin Cardozo in New York, right? And he was able to turn cases based on the facts to get to a just result. So you know what? I'm going to try and get to a just result. I'm constrained by the law, but I've got to apply the law to the facts of the case. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're ready to go to panelist two, candidate two, Joe.
Okay, I'll warn you, this is a long question.
Yeah.
You might want to take notes. A judge shall not, in the performance of judicial duties by words or conduct, manifest bias or prejudice, including but not limited to political affiliation. When one advertises candidacy indicating you are a liberal Democrat or a conservative Republican, are you creating or sending a message of political affiliation bias for those who may appear before you? Please elaborate why or why not.
I don't believe so. I believe that we have a context where we have discussed on a national basis the judges that we're appointing to the Supreme Court, for instance, and their judicial philosophies, and their party affiliations. The party affiliations, this is ultimately a political election. Candidates are permitted to attend political events during elections, and I have done so. And I have registered as a Republican my entire life. And in addition, I am on the ballot only as a Republican. And I did that partly because I believed it was the most honest approach for me. I am not a Democrat, and I wasn't going to run as one. And am I a conservative Republican? Yes, I have conservative beliefs. I believe in limited government. I believe in the Second Amendment, that there is a personal, individual amendment as described in Heller. And I don't believe that our judges should take an expansive view of interpreting law. And I think that's what that means. And I think it refers to my judicial characteristics.
Okay, go ahead.
Me. All right, so you probably saw my billboards. They say conservative Republican. It's on my yard signs. I was born and raised in York County. I love this nation. I love the principles upon which it was founded. I do not believe that socialism is a viable form of government, and I think it's been a proven failure repeatedly throughout history. Ben Carson made a note of that in the 2016 presidential election debate. At the same time, that does not mean that I'm biased against any litigants that come before me. I am cross-filed, and I will be able to represent all of York County because, as I think I've said a number of times here, my primary mission is to get to the right result in every case that would come before me if I'm fortunate enough to serve the community from the bench.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So the canons of judicial conduct specifically talk about an independent, fair, honorable, and impartial judiciary. And so I believe we have to be very careful when we are out there telling people, because the canons also talk about avoiding the appearance of impropriety. We may not be being impartial or being partial, but it could come across that way when we put ourselves out there. And I respect the two other candidates up here with me, but I have made a point of not trying to present in either fashion what I believe or what I don't believe or what's right or what's wrong. I think that both parties have something to bring to the table, and I believe everybody has an opinion that should be listened to. But as far as being a judge, we need to make sure that we're nonpartisan, that we're impartial, and that we don't present with an appearance of any of those. I have tried to avoid answering questions on the campaign trail, not because I don't want to answer, not because I don't have an answer, but because I don't think it's appropriate that everybody know what our personal beliefs are, because again, those types of cases can come before us, and I don't want someone arguing to me because they think that they know what my belief is. I want to hear the proper arguments, I want to hear from both sides, and I want to make a decision based on the law as it comes in, and again, as Attorney Stambaugh said, a just decision.
Okay, here's what we're going to do. I have a question, and I'm going to start with Steve down at the end, and then you're going to get the next question from one of the panelists. And we did that before, but it'll rotate, so everybody gets to answer this question. And here's what it is. What injustices have you witnessed in or outside the courtroom, and what was your response to those events? Take it.
Injustices inside the courtroom or outside the courtroom? Well, inside the courtroom, I think I haven't seen any injustices. I mean, if I think a judge isn't getting my, what I'm trying to throw down, then I try to persuade the judge that, my view of the world is right. In terms of outside the courtroom, I mean, our lives are filled with injustice. I mean, there's carnage, whether it's DUIs, whether it's theft, whether it's rape, whether it's, a car accident victim and they're maimed for the rest of their life, but there's not enough insurance money. Whether there's a health insurance lien that exceeds the available amount of insurance. I mean, I mean, lawyers deal with injustice every day of the week. It's our job to try and limit the carnage and get as much justice as possible out of, life ain't fair. And we got to do the best we can to make it as fair as possible. Understand that it's an imperfect world. And while we have the best system of government and justice in the world, it is nevertheless less than perfect.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Everybody gets to answer the question.
I think depending on what the injustice is, you might need to address it. I had a client in front of a district justice who was entitled to bail, and the judge refused to set bail. I remedied the situation by filing a bail petition in the Court of Common Pleas, and put in that the lower court had totally denied bail. My client was entitled to bail. I think that I've been in an uncomfortable situation in the Court of Common Pleas where I thought a judge was treating parties unfairly, and I had that uncomfortable meeting with the judge and just kind of expressed my concern. I think the judge respected me for pointing it out. I don't think that the judge was intending to do something. So when we see it, I think we need to address it. And it goes back to the question earlier about the gender bias and the racial bias. If we see something as lawyers, we should point it out to a judge. The judge may not notice it. If you're a judge, again, you're hoping that you're seeing things, but you should be receptive to hearing things because maybe you don't realize the way you're coming across in the courtroom.
Go ahead.
I've encountered a number of cases over the years where I felt a wrong had occurred. I had a client of mine who was a refugee from Nepal in Cumberland County. It was in Mechanicsburg, and he was arrested for public drunkenness. And we were trying to get a disposition on the case that would not impact his immigration status. He was a refugee. This wasn't somebody who came for economic reasons. He fled in terror thinking that he might be killed along with his brother, and experienced a lot of trauma along the way. It led, in fact, to alcoholism, which was an issue. We were trying to get a result where we could have maybe a disorderly conduct as opposed to a public drunkenness result, so it wouldn't necessarily impact on the immigration issue, which being a habitual drunkard is a potential problem. And I vividly remember the police officer had absolutely no sympathy for this. And this was a summary offense. I mean, it was a summary offense, but the overall impact on this person's life could have been completely catastrophic. And he was, in this case, was callous. And, ultimately, I pushed, and eventually we were able to resolve it with a disorderly. I had to go over the fellow's head and get somebody who was a more sympathetic ear. But it involved an enormous amount of work that I didn't bill for. And there have been many occasions where I've done that, where I've seen something that I thought was just absolutely wrong and wanted to help that person out and just did it because it needed done.
Okay, thank you. All right, what we're doing is we're going to leave that subject and turn to the subject of effectiveness. And we have panelist 3, Mike 2, candidate 3, Steve. So we're back on the same schedule. Go ahead.
So violent crime, particularly youth violence, is perceived to be at a crisis level by many experts today. What, if any, do you believe the appropriate role for the judiciary in addressing this perceived crisis?
So, again, we just get bombarded with media every night, and we see basically certain cities over and over and over again. I don't know what the current figures are for York County, whether it's up, down, or static, or just growing in proportion to the population growth. But, we have very effective local law enforcement. They've endorsed both Joe and I. We have a very effective District Attorney, Dave Sunday. By and large, the members of his team are pretty compassionate. I've, of course, a couple of cases where I think they need to be a little bit more compassionate, and we're working those through. We have a bench that does, I think, an excellent job of separating the wheat from the chaff in terms of, finding who needs a little bit more punishment and who needs a little bit less. And again, that at the end of the day is the job of the lawyers and also, frankly, from the bench and trying to, again, get to that just result. So, yeah, I don't have the figures on whether we're spiking consistently with what we're seeing on the national TV. So,
Go ahead.
Thank you. I believe that York County as a whole has a good reputation for dealing with juvenile matters. We have a very active public defender's office that represents the juveniles. We have a great county probation department that is actively involved. Addressing violent crime is obviously something that, again, is going on everywhere, and we need to figure out why. And addressing it in a courtroom, there's only so much a judge can do. But the various departments that we work with, as Attorney Stambaugh noted, the DA's office, having probation involved, being familiar with treatment programs. There are a lot of, Pennsylvania as a whole has a lot of juvenile treatment facilities, and some focus on violent crime. Placement for violent crime is something that does occur because if the family is not able to control, if there are underlying issues in the family, again, those things need to be addressed, and we need to find out why. If we knew that answer, probably none of the three of us would be here. We would probably be doing something else because that's an issue that is everywhere.
Joe, go ahead.
Can I have the question again?
Yeah, so violent crime, particularly youth violence, is perceived to be at a crisis level by many experts today. What, if any, do you believe is the appropriate role for the judiciary in addressing this perceived crisis?
Well, I think the primary issues there are likely executive and legislative. If there is a perception, we need to first of all act only on data, not just perception. I think we need to investigate as to whether that is actually a factual statement, whether there is an increase, what might be causing it, and whether there are levers that we can pull from the position of a judge to make a difference. Ultimately, law enforcement and the legislature are going to be the ones that are going to be dealing on the front line with that. When they bring the cases to us, they're going to determine whether or not there is a violent crime wave. You know, if we see increasing case numbers, we may have to change our approaches to that. And I'm not sure if that is in fact actually what we're seeing here in York County yet. Now, nationally, there are numbers that suggest, for instance, that murders are increasing in some areas, but I don't know if we're necessarily seeing that here. And my concern is what's happening here in York County. If in fact that is an issue, violent crime, there's essentially three buckets that defendants go into in criminal court. You've got people who are nonviolent, people who have a lot of issues, who repeatedly commit offenses, and people who are dangerous. The very first issue should be make sure that the public safety is protected, and then if we can, try to get them placed appropriately, the folks who are amenable, especially juveniles, to rehabilitation or remediation, get them services. But
Okay.
I'm not necessarily sure I agree with the first part of that, which is that there is an increase in violent crime, at least here in York County, among juveniles specifically.
Thank you.
I think there are notorious cases, but I don't know
All
if the data is there yet. I'd want to see it.
All right, we've cycled back to panelist one and candidate one. That's how we're keeping track of all this. Go ahead, Deanna.
Which court assignment would you prefer, and why are you well suited for such an assignment? How will you handle being assigned an area in which you have little or no experience?
So of the three of us, I think that I have the most diverse background as far as experience. I do have experience in criminal, civil, and family law. Of the group, between such as PFAs, which fall under, I believe, the family law, contempts, and criminal, I would probably be the most comfortable. And I believe that my background would suit me in that area. Unfortunately, we don't get to pick, and we will be assigned to whatever is available based on the rotation that's left. But criminal would be most beneficial to me, but I could also handle other areas.
Go ahead, Joe.
I think the natural fit for me is adult criminal court, but I'm willing to do whatever is necessary. Ultimately, we have to subvert our egos, and we have to basically pull in the oar that we're given and do it without complaint, work hard, and be part of a team. You know, I'm going to be the new kid on the block, right? You know, Judge Musty Cook is back here, President Judge Musty Cook is back here, and she's likely to have the new judges swabbing decks until we have experience that will allow us to, you know, function adequately in a courtroom. We're great at being lawyers, but what do we truly know about being a judge? I think the first thing I need to do is, you know, focus on learning how to be a judge, do it well, accept whatever role I'm given without complaint, learn to do it absolutely as well as I can, and do everything I can for the benefit of York County by working as part of a fully, I guess, functioning team of judges.
Okay, go ahead.
So, civil court, and I would ask and pray and beg that President Judge Cook would not have me swabbing decks. I will say, though, that, figuratively, but, you know, 34 years of doing this. So I started out in San Francisco with personal injury defense work, products liability, Sherman Act stuff, although that's antitrust law, there wasn't a lot of that, securities exchange. I did a bunch of bank failure litigation. I learned all that, like bank failure litigation. That was the days of FISLIC, and the Resolution Trust Corporation in the late 80s and early 90s. I learned all that on the fly. I mean, we're all smart lawyers. We'll sit down. The law, like I said, is here. You get the books out, you read it, you study it. I came back, worked for retired Judge Blakey, and we had the old City of York landfill, and what a disaster that was. I mean, we had thousands of local businesses drug into that by the major polluters. And so I became a CERCLA, a sort of super fun lawyer like that. And I sat down with a book, took it on vacation with me, and read CERCLA, right? And came back and hit the ground running. So President Judge Cook, I pray, civil court, but, you know, we'll do what we're told to do. But, you know, I think we have a very professional bench. And for the first time, I think I might run over. We have an extremely professional bench. And I think for the first time in a long time, well, they did it the last election cycle, pretty much everybody knows where their travel lane is and has a desire to stay in the travel lane. So I think, and I hope and I pray, that they will play, President Judge Cook will play strength to strength and acknowledge weakness is weakness. So hopefully that trend will continue.
All right, Joe, go ahead.
I'd like you to ask her that question.
She's not here to answer questions.
That's hypothetical.
She doesn't have a microphone, so.
That's hypothetical. Go ahead.
What familiarity do you have with resources for families in distress from involvement with children and youth or the court system? And where would you go to find resources for families who need help with maintaining a child in their care?
Go ahead.
That's not an area that I've worked. I've not worked in child dependency, and basically, it's not a question I'm going to be able to give you a very good answer to, Scott.
Go ahead.
So I've done a handful of essentially pro bono children and youth cases, and my mother worked in domestic relations for 25 years. I got lectures every night, well, not lectures. I was told stories every night of what she encountered during her business day. And the couple of cases I had in children and youth, I got to say I got involved on a pro bono basis because I found what children and youth was doing was so outrageous that I couldn't even hardly stomach it. And so I got involved there. At the end of the day, though, I think children and youth, again, the collapse of the center of our society is rippling out through our community. And it ripples out through families, through juvenile, it ripples out through drug abuse, it ripples out everywhere. And until we somehow find a way to recapture the core, we're going to continue to deal with the symptoms and the carnage. So I think our programs do the best they can do. To the extent that those matters come before judges, again, it's just trying to be patient, listen, see the facts, and do the right thing. Because at the end of the day, every single judge leaves this courthouse and has to go home and look in a mirror. And I think they all want to do the best they can.
Thank you.
I have done some dependency and some delinquency and have had cases involved with children and youth. There are a lot of resources available in York County. There's not necessarily enough for everything that we need, but there are a number of resources. I think as Attorney Stambaugh pointed out, Children and Youth does have familiarity with resources available, and that's obviously a very good starting point. There are a number of family law lawyers in this area, and when I have needed something in the past, I have reached out to them and said, I'm looking for, someone who does a 5329 evaluation, or I'm looking for someone who can guide me to do a home study. And so I know the resources are available in York, and there's the camaraderie. We share information. The one thing that I know that probably neither of the other attorneys know is that we also have a money available that you can ask the judges for dependency or delinquent youth that are in the system and can seek for specific things. There are things that children and youth will not cover. And so we have, and I'm part of that committee where we get requests, and we will pay for certain things such as a driver's license or an instrument or something to allow the child to be able to do things even though they might be involved in the system.
All right, we're going to go now to panelist 3. Mike, go ahead. Your question.
Why should people care about this judicial race? How do judges affect their lives if they are not getting in trouble with the law or getting a divorce?
Well, they could have a car accident. Okay. A family member could die and they could end up in a state court, right? A family member could die and children could be in orphans court. Ultimately, we had a governor that shut us all down, picked winners and losers. So you could go to Walmart, you could go to Lowe's, go to Home Depot, but if you wanted to go to a private business owned by a family, you couldn't do that. That was shut down. Judge Stackhouse, Western District of Pennsylvania, declared that unconstitutional. It's on appeal to the Third Circuit. Those kind of real-life decisions can come before the York County Court. there's going to be all sorts of Second Amendment type decisions that are coming around as they further constrict the right to keep and bear arms and disqualify people that have heretofore had that right. So, I mean, I could sit up here and hypothesize myriad ways, but, you know, as soon as you say it's not going to affect me, the wheel comes around and you're under it, right? Yeah, people need, if we've learned anything over the last couple of years, it's that people need to get more involved in government at all levels. School boards, judges, elected politicians, local supervisors, townships, boards, across the board.
Suzanne?
Thank you. So this is a race for the Court of Common Pleas. So this court handles everything, family, civil, criminal, state, anything that is going to impact this county is going to come through this court. So this race is important to everybody. I tell people all the time, this local race, whether it's Court of Common Pleas or school board or township supervisor, those races are going to impact you more than the national races. I know the national races obviously have an impact, and as Attorney Stambaugh noted, there were some federal decisions that impacted the state. But in realistic world, this court has the ability to touch almost everything that comes into this county. This court does handle election issues. This court will handle, as the questions have been asked, dependency, delinquency. You know, as Steve said, you could get in a car accident. Yes, that could bring you in. Your house could be burglarized, your car could be hit on the street. There are just countless ways that you could be impacted. And so clearly this race is important to everybody in this community.
Go ahead, Joe.
The Court of Common Pleas has a very diverse caseload. You could be a victim to a crime. You could be a witness to a crime. There's 8,000 to 10,000 adult criminal court cases every year. There's 430,000 people in York County. So that's, you know, it's not evenly distributed, but it could be 1 out of 40 people could have an adult criminal court case. How many witnesses do we have? How many victims do we have? We've had, we have an aging population. We had a lot of people die last year that, from illness or whether COVID or other things that had to have estates opened. There are businesses that are trying to develop and maybe get an adverse zoning hearing, and they need to appeal that so they can get an error corrected. Those aren't people that are looking for a divorce, or they're not going to criminal court, and they need to have fair justice. They need to have justice that moves promptly. Justice delayed is justice denied. Adoptions are another way that people will come into the court system. Dependency. The fabric of a functioning civil society depends on peaceful, orderly dispute resolution and the processing of claims. And if people do not have a process for that as an outlet, they resort to other means which creates disorder, whether it's crime or whether it's conflict. We need to protect people who may be victims in domestic cases. There's all kinds of things. It's not just crimes, and it's not just divorces.
All right, we're done with the panelist questions. We still have a bit of time before we get to getting to know you with a lightning round. So we're back to Suzanne here, candidate number 1 in our numerical order. All right, so you're serving on the bench. What role do you have to bring important legal or judicial issues before the public or the legislature? Obviously, that can get you into some controversy, so take it.
So even though you have become a judge, I don't think that prohibits you from being out and speaking about how the system works. I think it's good for judges to go out and to do presentations and be part of the community. Obviously, it cannot relate to anything that is appearing in front of you or could appear in front of you, but speaking about the process and the system. I know York County Bar Association has a legal lines program, and a number of judges have gone on there, retired or current, to explain what's relevant about our judge system, what are the juries going to do. So there are lots of ways that the judges can remain active in the community.
Go ahead.
Ultimately, you're stepping off the field of advocacy and you're becoming an umpire and calling balls and strikes. And you have a very circumscribed ability to move policy. You can testify in front of the legislature, you can be part of sentencing commissions, things of that nature. You participate in bar association functions, certainly. But I think really my position on that is that, and my hope personally would be that I would withdraw from virtually everything that I've been doing, certainly from an advocacy or partisan perspective. I have to, right? And focus, first of all, for the first few years of me being a judge, on me being a judge. As I said before, there's a lot to learn, and you're not just going to walk in there and be excellent at the job. That's my most important project, because that's really what the voters are signing up to get. They don't necessarily want me to be out there and changing the world. They want me to do my job as absolutely well as I can, and that's my primary obligation. Once I feel comfortable doing that, I will look for ways that I can make the system work better. I'd like to focus on some things, simplification of rules, do what I can to try to make the court system function more accessibly for people. But I want to, first of all, be a really good judge.
Steve, go ahead.
I think you really have to be careful, particularly when you're talking about public policy and issues like that. I don't really think we, as judges, would be able to do that. Now, on the other hand, we've had local judges who help move the needle on treatment courts and things like that. That's all very important in terms of just general educational, this is how it works, this is, how juries work and all that kind of stuff. Sure, that's fine. I have no problem with doing that. There are some tweaks I would like to see in the, local rules of court. But, I can do that through the Bar Association on the local rules of court committee. So, I think you got to be really careful. The days of advocacy will be gone unless you're really trying to move the needle on something like treatment court or something along those lines.
Go ahead.
I did answer that.
You did answer?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we all did.
You're next, Joe. Next question. The pandemic has had a significant impact on the practice of law, just as it has had a significant impact on much of our society. So are there any lessons learned, particularly in the practice of the law and in the courts, that should be used moving forward?
People need to be more patient with each other and realize that we're all struggling.
Right.
And I think that's a lesson I hope will be an enduring one. I think that we ought to focus more on function than form. There are certain things for which Zoom is woefully inadequate, but there are many things which it works extraordinarily well for. I had a client that was from North Carolina that had to do a plea to essentially a summary offense at a magisterial district court in York County, and we had it all organized. We did it by Zoom. He didn't have to drive, 6, 7, 8 hours up here to be in court for 10 minutes. And that compares to a case that I had probably 10 or 15 years ago here in York County at the Magisterial District Court, where my client needed to come in to basically sign some paper, 5 minutes, had to come from Wisconsin. And it was a little tricky because he had a warrant for his failure to appear in York County. We're trying to get lifted, so he couldn't get stopped for speeding on the way. But the travel burden was really ridiculous. It was absurd, and we have a way to solve that today. This is not the 1800s. We can continue to use some of these innovations that we came up with out of necessity. We found out, it wasn't so bad. Do we want to use them all the time for everything? Not necessarily. There's a certain fit to some of them. But I think we want to, it was a great opportunity to experiment with new stuff, have people get outside of their comfort zone, and maybe change our little hidebound ways of doing things. And I think some of them worked very well.
Okay, go ahead.
So the carnage that the global pandemic caused continues. And if you have any doubt about that, just drive around your county and look for all the help wanted signs. Look at all the apologies on businesses when you walk in. We're sorry that we're understaffed and we can't serve you properly. We're doing the best we can. We're over a year into this. I can rattle off a list of businesses, family-owned businesses that have gone under, right? And when it comes to the courts, again, justice, I know there's the Criminal Speedy Trial Act, but, people get one shot at getting their fair day in court. And if they don't get it, they don't get another shot at it, okay? Because most people can't afford their lawyer in the first place, then they can't afford the appeal and the uncertainty that goes in with all of that. So Zoom is great for certain limited things. I would never have a trial by Zoom. I think, for some criminal defendants, they need to walk themselves into the courtroom and have the seal of that official proceeding bear down upon them so that they understand the gravity. Then in other situations, Zoom's a great way to resolve things. So again, the more nuanced you can be, the more precise you can be, the better off for everybody. But the fallout and carnage from this pandemic continues.
Thank you. Go ahead, Suzanne.
So the impact on the practice of law from the pandemic was huge. The one thing that I did learn is I needed to upgrade a lot of my technology. So I've done that now. But as Attorney Gothie pointed out, being patient was something that I think I did see a lot of that. Flexibility, we learn to be flexible. We learn to adapt. I think as we noted, there are some things that came out of it that were really good. We learned that we can be flexible, that we can use technology. As Joe pointed out about having a client travel and having witnesses available that normally wouldn't have been able to appear in person. And so we've shown that Zoom can be helpful. But the impact was huge. There were a lot of law offices that didn't function, and that was difficult. But I think that the practice of law is better for it in that we've learned that technology does work. We've also learned that our courthouse was set up for it. And not if you traveled at all to other counties, they didn't have the technology, they didn't have the large screens, they didn't have the ability to accommodate the Zoom as much as we did. So I did appreciate that as far as practicing here.
Mm-hmm. All right, now we're going to turn to something even briefer, if you will, than the elevator speech. You got it? We're going to call this the lightning round. And you get 1 or 2 word answers, and I think we're at you, Steve, if I got this right.
Of course.
So here it is, 1 or 2 words, that's it. I'll cut you off if you go more than 3. Anyway, here it is. What was your first job and or worst job?
Worked for my father at his self-service gas station when I was my first grade summer.
You were what? I didn't hear that.
My father owned 2 golf service stations, full service back in the day, and I worked at his service stations my first grade summer.
There you go. Your turn.
My first and worst are the same. I worked in a pet store, which I thought I would absolutely love, except I got bit by the rat, and that just freaked me out.
Go ahead, Joe.
Mowing lawns for my family's apartment business.
Okay, well,
First
now we're
job.
ready here for Suzanne. What is something unexpected that most people do not know about you as a person?
So I take soda tabs or beer tabs or wine corks and I turn them into coasters.
Turn them into what?
Coasters.
Oh, coasters, okay. Go ahead.
I take blacksmithing classes. I do it partly because I'm terrible at working with my hands, and I need to get into, I need to do things that stretch me and make me realize that you've got to be uncomfortable and work to get better.
You notice I'm letting you give more than 1 or 2 words.
I appreciate that. The seat buzzer didn't go off.
I
that time.
understand. Go ahead.
Glad I had time to think about it. I'm pretty emotional. I like on a really corny commercial or, Hallmark movies or something, I bawl like a baby.
All right, now we're down to you, Joe, if I got this all right. What expertise, hobbies, interests do you have outside the law? You get to name one.
Information technology,
Information technology. And you kept it to 2 words. Go ahead.
IT.
Go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, you.
Harley Davidson.
What'd you say?
Harley Davidson.
I got it. We're back to you, Suzanne.
Running, I like running.
You like running, okay. Now we're back to the end of the table there, Steve.
Sure.
I like this one. Your favorite pro sport and team?
My favorite pro sport and team. Oh, boy. I got a real problem with people that don't stand for the American flag, so I really haven't been watching too many sports.
Okay, that's fine.
There you go.
Go ahead.
So I like the Baltimore Orioles, but I have a relative who works for the Detroit Tigers, so I also like them.
Oh, there you go. All right, let's see. We're back to,
Don't forget Jim.
oh, you didn't answer?
Steelers.
What?
The Steelers.
The Steelers.
The Stillers.
Okay, I got it. Now we'll go. Now we'll go back to number 1. What are your guilty pleasures?
I like good craft beer.
Good craft beer,
Pizza.
pizza. All right, go down in the end, Steve.
Guilty pleasures. I really don't have any guilt over my pleasures. I mean, I don't know.
You have no guilt.
Over my I don't know.
That's
Dark
all right.
beer.
If you don't have any, you don't have any.
I don't have. If I have guilt, I wouldn't do it.
All right, now we're down to you. You get the last. You get the last question. You're first on the last question. Believe it or not, 1 or 2 word answers. Oh, this will be easy. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Dog. There's
Yeah.
1 dog. Go ahead.
Dogs.
That's 2 for dog. Go ahead.
Dog.
That's 3 for dog. And we'll get the head president here, the York County Bar Association, Chris Farrell. Come on up here, Chris.
Thank you all for being with us here tonight. I want to thank again our fantastic moderator, Terry Madonna, and all our panelists, Mike Gorsinger, Scott Fisher, and Deanna Wright. All 4 of these individuals have worked tirelessly for us, not just tonight, but over a series of days and weeks, coming up with the appropriate questions to ask our candidates and to make this a fulfilling and informational event. And I also want to thank our candidates, Suzanne, Joe, Steve. I've known and practiced with all of you for over 20 years. You're all fine attorneys, and I think you've done an excellent job tonight in telling the York County voters more about yourself, your philosophy, and hopefully this event reached a number of individuals to hear this information so that they can make an informed decision in our upcoming election. Ultimately, 2 of you will most certainly take the bench of the York County Court of Common Pleas sometime in 2022, and I wish all of you success, because ultimately the success of the 2 candidates is the success for all practicing lawyers in York County and the York County community in general. Tonight, immediately following this forum, the York College Center for Community Engagement's Arthur J. Gladfelder Institute for Public Policy will be conducting a poll of the York County Bar Association members regarding these 3 candidates. These 3 candidates who are now running for the 2 judicial vacancies on the York County Court of Common Pleas. The attorney and judge members of our bar are given an opportunity to weigh in and evaluate these candidates regarding their professional qualifications, most specifically their competence, their judicial temperament, and their integrity. The judicial evaluation is a longstanding activity of our association. The poll is undertaken as a public service and not for the purpose of endorsing any specific candidate or political party. On May 7th, the results of this bar poll will be released to the general public. You can find these specific bar results on pavotesmart.com or yorkbar.com. As everyone here knows, and we've had a lot of discussion tonight, our judges are the champions for the rule of law. Regardless of the issue, the judges decide disagreements that can have great impact on all Pennsylvanians, and most specifically individuals here in York County. The York County Bar Association, along with the Pennsylvania Bar Association, joins together in helping to get this important information to the members of our community. Before casting your ballot, we ask you to consider the information you heard here tonight. We also ask you to consider the results of the bar poll in making this very, very important selection. The judges elected today will shape the laws of tomorrow. It's imperative that all members of the York County voting public make an informed decision about who will be safeguarding our individual rights and ensuring that our democracy prevails. Again, thank you to our candidates, thank you to our panelists, thank you to our moderator, and thank you for everyone who participated in this process and helped make tonight possible.
Thank you.
It's over.